Asato ma satkamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya, aviravirmayeti, rudrayatte dakshinam mukham, tena mam pahi nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Last week, we saw the mystery of the avatar, the incarnation, how the Gita presents why the avatar comes and how we can understand the mystery, because as Krishna points out that Janma Karma Chame Divyam is divine, that my birth, the birth of the avatara is divine. Now divine in the sense we saw that it is not bound by karma, that when the divine being comes down, the divine being is the master of Maya, who controls Maya. While for the rest of us, it is the Maya that controls us. So there is a difference between an avatar and the rest of us. But if you look at it from the absolute standpoint, pretty much everything that we say to the avatar can be applied to the Atman. Because that's what Krishna himself said in the second chapter. The Atman is birthless and deathless. So in that sense, since each one of us is that Atman, each one of us is divine, then neither are we controlled by Maya. As Atman, we are not controlled by Maya. But right now, even though that is the reality, we don't live with that awareness that we are the Atman. We live with the awareness that we are human beings. And so, although from that paramarthika, that abstract, that absolute sense, we are as birthless and deathless as Krishna is, in this plane in which we are, there is a difference. And that is why when Sri Ramakrishna spoke with Narendranath and said, he who is Rama, he who was Krishna, is now Ramakrishna in this body, he added this one phrase, but not in your Vedantic sense. Now that's essentially what he meant. If you look at but in the relative state, there's a lot of distinction. The best way to understand this is to, very recently, last month, earlier this month, we had the Ganesh Puja. And oftentimes, the way Ganesha is worshipped, they have usually in images of Ganesha made of oftentimes of clay, sometimes of metal, and depending if it's a permanent temple, then it could be made of many different materials. And Ganesha's vehicle is the mouse. And so usually you'll have, if the image is made of clay, then that mushaka will also be made of clay. Now, how right would it be for the mushaka to look at Ganesha and say, you and I are same? Because essentially, as clay, the material is the same in both of them. But a mushaka can never become Ganesha. A mushaka will always remain a mushaka. But as clay, there is no difference between the material of which Ganesha is made and the material of which mushaka is made. That's important to keep in mind. As Brahman, there is just one reality, infinite reality. There is no distinction. But with form, we have this little human form with limited abilities compared to the divine abilities. So there is that difference. And that is why Sri Ramakrishna said, not in your Vedantic sense. Because otherwise, that's why Avatara is a mystery. Because if you look at it in many aspects, an incarnation looks pretty much like a human being. But then there are some other aspects which looks very different from a human being. So it's a mixture of the human and the divine. The last verse which we studied was verse 9, in which Krishna says, "Whoever thus understands my divine birth and action in the right manner is not born again after leaving the body and comes to me, O Arjuna." The verse that we will begin studying today is verse 10. And the message here is that the spiritual path, the path to freedom, is not new, which is actually good news for us. The text that we are studying is several centuries old. By some estimates, at least 2,000 to 3,000 years, more than 2,000, at least 3,000 years old. And the advantage is that the method taught in the Gita, we are not the first ones to try it out. Sometimes, if a new gadget comes and some people who are just crazy after new things, they'll just go and buy it. But most people, especially if it's an expensive gadget, will just wait and see. This is a new thing. No one really knows how it is going to work. Let's look at the reviews first. Let's wait for a week or two. Let's see the early buyers, what they think about it, so that we learn from their experience and then decide. If it gets lots of bad reviews, then we don't have to buy it. The good news about the Gita is it's more than 3,000 years old. Lots of reviews have come. And the reviews are good because people who have read this and studied this, we have actually seen their lives change for the better. That they have become saints, they have become enlightened. So we are on a surer path, knowing that this is not something new and untested, but in fact it's been tested over and over and over again. And that's the message here. Look at verse 10. Vitaraga bhaya krodha manmaya mamupashritaha bahavo jnana tapasa puta madbhavamagataha. Freed from attachment, fear and anger, absorbed in me, taking refuge in me, and purified by the fire of knowledge, many have attained my being. That's what I mean by saying many reviews. Many have already attained to the being of divine when they followed all these requirements. To be free from attachment, fear and anger, absorbed in me. Now, this me is very important. There's lots of places in the Gita, pretty much most places, with probably the exception of a few. Whenever Krishna says me, we have to just ask, what does that me mean? It's like the question that in Vedanta we say, who are you? Who am I? So when Krishna says I or me, who is Krishna referring to? Apparently, even though he was an avatar, we do see that Krishna had a body as long as he lived. He had a mind. He moved and talked and sang and played lovely. He was a great musician. Who taught him to play flute? We don't know. It was just an inborn thing, or he went to a teacher and learned how to play his flute. But lots of things he did the way you and I do it. And so, when Krishna says me, is there something different to it than when you and I say me? And in our case, we will see, in the course of the day, we use the first person pronoun so often. I did this, I need to do this, this is my place, I, my, mine. It comes so often in our conversation. And usually, almost always, when we say I or mine, when I say I, now when I say, well, I'm sitting here, I'm really referring to this person who is here. And this person has a body, has a mind, and so that's why I'm sitting here, because actually what is sitting on this chair is this body. And so I'm saying, I'm sitting here, my I or me, therefore, is connected with this body. Now, when Krishna says, comes to me, does that include Krishna's body or Krishna's mind? And the answer is no. Because if Krishna also refers to his body and mind when he says me, and you and I also refer to our body and mind if we say me, then why is he an avatar? He's just like you and me. That's another reason why we see that he is different. When someone like Krishna or Rama or Jesus or Buddha, when they use the word I or me, they are referring to the real me, the real self, which is within the body, within the mind, even within the ego. And so whenever Krishna says here, absorbed in me, now some people clearly, some Krishna devotees might take this literally. Me means only Krishna, not Shiva, not Rama, not anybody, only Krishna. Some people take it literally. But the consensus generally has been of the students of the Gita that when Krishna says me, it's the real me, the true self. So you can safely, whenever Krishna says me, replace it by the word Atman or Brahman. It won't change the meaning. So freed from attachment, fear and anger, absorbed in the Atman, absorbed in the true self, taking refuge in the Atman, letting go of all other supports, and purified by the fire of knowledge, then they have attained to my being. That means they have realized their true self, that they have become enlightened. So, attachment, fear and anger, raga, bhaya, krodha, these are the three things. The primary of these is really raga, attachment, because it is our attachment to the body and mind, our attachment to people, places and things, which gives rise to fear and anger. Because our attachment, when there is an obstruction in some form, in my either wanting or doing something for anything that I'm attached to, if that obstruction is too strong for me, then it generates fear. If that obstruction is strong and I cannot do anything about it, it also sometimes generates anger. If I can do something about it, of course I will do something about it. For instance, I'm attached to the body and I see a mosquito sitting here. Well, I can do something about it. I can just whack it, do something about it. But if there is something and I can't do anything about it, then I'm either going to be afraid of it, which was the case during the pandemic. We couldn't see the virus, how it would come. And so there was fear. And that was because it was affecting the body and mind. Yes, both. And we were attached to the body and mind. So that's how attachment, fear, and anger are connected. Absorbed in me means living with awareness that me, that is God, alone exists. Taking refuge in me means letting go of all other supports. This is something important to remember, that oftentimes we say, surrender to God. And only when we try to practice it, we realize it's one of the very difficult things to do. By that I mean, partial surrender is a little bit easy. That surrender understood in the sense of dependence on God. And clearly, we are dependent on so many things in life. We say, among the many things I'm dependent on, God is also kind of a backup. One more thing or one more person I can depend on. If everything else fails, then at least there is someone. So that is one kind of dependence, one kind of taking refuge. But when it is said here that taking refuge in me, it really means a total surrender, total refuge. Now that kind of a total surrender occurs only when we realize that all other supports we have in life are just too fragile. That they are great as long as they are there, but we cannot depend on them totally. That there is this one story, sometimes they say, that there was one person who was a politician and he had a son, and the son was growing up and he was seeing his dad making his name and had a lot of success in his political career. So this son also said, Dad, I also want to be a politician like you. And the dad said, oh, don't worry about it now. Let's see after some time. And he said, no, 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 no. You are such an experienced in this line that you have to start training me now. And the dad wasn't a little bit reluctant, but the son was insisting, no, no, teach me how to be a good politician. And the dad said, okay, come on. So he takes him out one day for a walk. And then they come out, and then one place they found a wall, which is about 15 feet high. So this dad says, okay, my son, climb on that wall. So the son says, oh, training is going on, of course. So he climbs up on that wall. And then the dad says, okay, now jump from there. Now, 15, 20 feet is quite a lot to jump from. And the son said, no, I'll break my hands or feet from that height if I jump. The dad says, I'm here for you. Don't you trust me? And the son says, well, of course my dad is there. Dad said, I'll hold you. And so the son jumps. And then the dad just moves away. He just falls. His hands are fractured. Immediately the dad calls 911. They go to an ambulance. He admits him in a hospital for treatment, all of that. And then the son felt betrayed and angry. How could you do this to me? And then the dad tells him, that's your first lesson in politics. Don't trust even your father. Now, we don't have to be so cynical about life itself, but there are many people, places, things, ideologies, so many things we depend on, we trust them. And sometime or other, oftentimes we just get disillusioned. We thought, oh, I trusted this and it was a wrong idea to do it. Sooner or later, we'll all realize the only support that can be trusted without any reservation is God. And when we realize that, then that total surrender will come. And so sometimes it is good to feel a little vulnerable, good to feel, unless that sense of helplessness is felt at a deeper level, it's very difficult to depend totally on God. That's the idea. So taking refuge in me, while it sounds a very simple thing to do, when we start practicing it, we realize it'll take a while before that complete dependence on God comes. Purified by the fire of knowledge. Now, knowledge, the Gita will also describe later on, destroys all ignorance the way fire consumes fuel. And so this analogy often comes, because knowledge is what removes ignorance. And the problem is ignorance of our own self. And so purified by the fire of knowledge, they attain my being, means they attain moksha. So people who have followed the teachings of the Gita, they were freed from the attachment, fear and anger. It was easier for them then to feel absorbed in the divine, take refuge in the divine, and be purified with the fire of knowledge. And then they attain to my being. Which in other words means, if you and I, when we study the Gita, we take these teachings to heart, all of these things can happen to us as well. And that's the goal of the Gita. Not simply to understand it intellectually, but to actually see the inner transformation occurring in our lives. Verse 11. Ye yatha mam prapadyante tams tathaiva bhajamyaham mama vartmanuvartante manushya partha sarvashaha. So if God is so all-powerful, someone in whom we can take total refuge, then the question would be, why doesn't God free us all? Why do we have to struggle to do all this? And then looking at life, we see around us that some people seem to make a lot of spiritual progress, some people a little bit average progress, and some people seem to be going in just opposite direction. Why would God allow this? God is so powerful. And earlier verse, and later on also, he will say that, oh, in this verse itself, that everybody goes on the path of the divine. Why doesn't God make everyone good? Why does God allow evil to be? In fact, that's some of the question that gets so often. Why is there so much suffering, so much evil, if God is the compassionate, loving presence in the world? And that's addressed here. So, Krishna says, in whichever manner people worship me, in the same manner do I fulfill them. O Partha, it is my path that people follow in all ways. In whichever manner. So, what Krishna is saying here is, I don't play favorites. I don't have people I like. I don't have people I hate. I just give to people what they want the way they want it. So people get what they seek. And as I've sometimes said, if we don't always get what we seek, we should consider ourselves lucky. Because most of the time, most of us don't know what's good for us. What we think is good for us, in retrospect, sometimes think, oh, I spent so much time and energy for this, it wasn't worth it. And just seems a waste of effort. And so, there is this one teaching, a disciple of Ramakrishna, named Swami Akhandananda, whose actually birthday occurred just 2 days ago. He once said, if you want something, that's the law of nature. If you want something, you will get it. And now we might say, well, I want so many things, I don't always get them. The only difference is that I will not get it according to my calendar. That if I truly badly want something, no matter how materialistic it may be, no matter how worldly it may be, if that's what I want, and I am ready to do anything for it, I will get it. And of course, Gita will say, if not in this life, next life. But you will get it, but you have to pursue it. So that's the first law. If you want something, you will get it. But the second part, if you don't want anything, you will get everything. That's the tough part. It's easy to want something and to work hard for it and to get it. And of course, there is some satisfaction when you have worked hard for something and you get it. There is satisfaction, no doubt about it. But what we get is a limited entity. And so the satisfaction and joy also is limited. We can't expect, I've got this now, I'm going to be eternally happy. It's not going to happen. But if I'm looking for eternal happiness, then I should be able to say, I don't want anything in life. Actually, it's not such a bad idea to follow that path of not wanting anything. Because sometimes we make the mistake of thinking, if I don't want something, I will not get it, which doesn't happen. The reality is this. What I'm going to get in life, I'm going to get it, no matter what. What I'm not going to get in life, I'm not going to get it, no matter what. The only difference is, right now, I don't know what I'm going to get, what I'm not going to get. And so there is this desire in the heart, I want this or I don't want this. But the reality is, what we are going to get, we are going to get. Now that doesn't mean just sitting in a corner doing nothing. What it means is we need to carry out all of our duties and responsibilities as best we can. But after we have done our best, what will happen will happen. What will not happen will not happen. Because sometimes people work really hard and they don't get what they wanted. Sometimes people don't work so hard and they just get it. And so, while working hard does play a role in success, working hard itself is not a guarantee for success. There are always some factor in any enterprise, in any project. There is always some factor over which we have no control. Because a lot of times, working hard is within our control. Being sincere is within our control. But any work in the external world, there are so many factors, so many powers working in the world over which we have no control. And therefore, best is to, the Gita's medicine for that is carry out your duties, which is what Krishna will tell Arjuna. In this battlefield, carry out your duty, do your duty. The results will take care of themselves. Success is not the goal. The goal is to do your work as best you can and recognize that the more my ego gets out of the way, the closer I will go to God. So the success in the Gita terms is not a greater accomplishment in our work, but success is a transformation, transcendence of our human limitations. And that doesn't mean only meditation or prayer. Whatever work we are doing and whatever that needs to be qualified, so long as the work is ethical and moral, it's not like I can go on cheating people and do it in a detached way. Doing unethical work in a detached way won't happen. I mean, if someone is truly working in a detached way, they will not be able to do unethical work. So people, therefore, get what they seek. And one important thing is this. We seek many things in life, and those of us who are spiritual seekers, we also seek moksha. So moksha becomes one of the many goals in life, one of the many things we seek in life, which is okay, which is kind of better than not having any place for moksha in our life. But the reality is simply this, that seeking things in the material world and seeking moksha are actually contradictory enterprises. The two cannot go together, because seeking things in the world is taking me in one direction. Seeking moksha is taking me in a different direction. And if I try to do both with equal force, I probably will not move at all. Neither go here nor there. So we have to somehow see what is it that I want more. And that's the essential dilemma that most of us have. How much time and energy should I bestow in pursuing things of the world, and how much time and energy should I pursue in seeking moksha? And because these are in two opposite directions, we then have the dilemma. How can I budget my time and energy into this? And the Gita's solution to that is to see that just have one goal. And that is, if I want success in this world, it's still possible to be religious. It's still possible to pray to God for success in this world. So you can kind of incorporate religion, so to speak, and even it's possible to pray in a very worldly way and have a worldly goal. And in that way, in a way, that would be an authentic thing to do. That even when I go to a temple, even when I pray for a worldly goal because that is what I want. That would be authenticity. Worldly people are sometimes more authentic than spiritual people, because spiritual people are always have these inner conflicts. I want this, but I want that too. But authenticity would be, If you want something, give your whole mind to it. So how can I be spiritually authentic? And that is actually the central teaching of the Gita. Because there is nothing very spiritual about fighting on a battlefield. But what Krishna is saying is, if you do that, if you see the purpose of what you're doing, that violence is never great. But if that's the only option you have, then the least thing you can see is whether I'm doing it for the right cause. And if I'm doing it in a detached way, that there is no self-interest involved. If Arjuna were to fight this battle thinking, oh, one day I'm going to be the king and I'll rule over these people, then it wouldn't be a dharma yuddha. But if he is now fighting this because I don't want to fight this battle, this was forced upon me, and if I don't do this, then the powers of evil will take hold of it and people will suffer for generations. So that's why I'm doing my duty. So fighting on a battlefield is very different from doing worship in a temple. But if I do it for the right cause, in a right way, in a detached manner, remaining absorbed in the divine, even as I'm carrying out my so-called secular activities, then that itself becomes a worship. And so it's possible to be authentic as spiritual seekers when we just change the way we look at the work we have to do. This kind of a division we have between secular work and spiritual work, that division has to go, because that actually divides our life. True spirituality is an undivided life. Either we can be fully worldly or we can be fully spiritual. So if I change my attitude toward the work I do, then every work can be done as a worship. Provided, of course, again, every time I use the word work or karma, you have to qualify it by saying it has to be according to dharma. It has to be ethical, it has to be moral. So that's what Krishna is saying here, that whatever people seek, it's not that I am giving moksha to some people and not giving moksha to others. Those who want moksha will get it. Those who want success in the world will also get it. They will get what they ask for. And he says, everyone, it is my path that people follow in all ways. Why is it my path? Because the fulfillment of every wish, whether it is spiritual or material, comes through God's grace. So even when, and again, a worldly person, an atheistic person may not even see it that way. But what a devotee will see is that even when a worldly person prays for a worldly thing and gets it, even that worldly success comes through God's grace. And so everyone in that sense, whether or not they are praying to God for it, that when they want something, they get it, that getting occurs through God's grace. And that's what Krishna means by saying that it is my path that people follow in all ways. So not even an atheist really is separated from God and God's grace. Although, as I said, an atheist will not accept it. So you might have heard this story about, there was this one elderly person and whose neighbor was an atheist. And so this elderly person became so old, wasn't able to go out and even do his groceries or get food. But he was a very prayerful person, would spend long hours in prayer. And they were friends, the neighbor, the atheist neighbor. The atheist would come and tell him, stop this praying. What has God done for you? Look now, you don't even have time and you don't even have energy to go and do groceries for yourself. Is God coming and cooking for you? Is God doing your grocery for you? And then this devotee would just smile and say, I just depend on the Lord to do everything. And so one day passed because there was no food, and this devotee is too old to cook and too old to go and do groceries. And then this neighbor every day is kind of looking from his window and said, let the fellow suffer. I'm telling him there is no such thing as God, and let him suffer. So 1 day, 2 days, 3 days passed. Then his neighbor looked out of the window. No help has come. And then finally this atheistic neighbor, he just felt, it's not, I may not believe in God, but I'm seeing a person suffering. So I just can't bear this, my friend, close friend, suffering because of hunger. So this atheist friend goes to the grocery and buys it and cooks something for him and gives it to him. And say, at least now do you accept? God did not come for your help. It's me who did it for you. And then this devotee says, oh, it's the grace of God that God made an atheist go to the grocery store and bring it to me. How wonderful is God's glory that he could make even an atheist do things for God. And I'm sure, I don't know what the atheist said in reply to that. And so God's grace, just like there is a mystery of the avatar, there is a mystery about grace as well. It's a big subject. There is a text called the Avadhuta Gita. And it's a very non-dualistic text. But the very first verse of that text, there is this line there which says, Ishvara anugrahadeva pumsam advaita vasana, which says, even the desire for non-duality comes through God's grace. Go figure what that means. And so grace is there's a lot we can talk about it. And that's what Krishna means when he says, it's my path that people follow in all ways. And so the question is, if everyone follows God's path, why don't they seek God alone? Why do they seek any other thing at all? And that's what Krishna describes in verse 12. Kangshantav karmanam siddhim yajanta iha devataha kshipram hi manushe loke siddhir bhavati karmaja. Seeking success in work here in this world, people worship the gods. Success resulting from work is attained quickly in the human world. So, worship the gods. It's a yajanta iha devataha. So, clearly, and in the Hindu tradition, because there are many different deities, and each deity represents a special aspect of the divine. And so it's common for people to think, for instance, Ganesha is seen as a Vignaharta, one who removes all obstacles. Lakshmi is seen as a goddess of wealth and prosperity. And so those who want wealth can pray to God in general, but they think I could go to a specialized aspect of the divine, so they'll pray to Lakshmi. Saraswati is seen as goddess of knowledge. So when people worship, when they want knowledge, they'll pray to Saraswati. And so seeking success in work here in this world, people worship these different aspects, specialized aspects of the divine. But the word gods here has also a wider meaning. Gods, normally we think of gods as those beings who are more powerful than us. And so it's not, people who are religious might want to pray to these different deities for the different fulfillment of their desires. But for many worldly people, of course, but also religious people who are operating in this world, they look upon people in positions of power as kind of gods on this planet. And so sometimes, because people might sometimes find, and that might bear out from their experience, or praying to God that I want this, may work, may take its own time, if at all it works. But then going and protesting before your congressman, or writing letters to your senator, or doing some activism, that might yield results too. And so we are drawing the attention of people in this world who have power to give me the things I want, or who can change the situation in some way. So they are kind of gods in human form in this world. They may not have this immense power of Ganesha or Lakshmi or Saraswati, But if we think of how often we turn to people in positions of power to do things for us, the psychology is not very different. We turn to those sources who have the ability, the power to give me what I want. And that's what Krishna is referring to here. Seeking success in work here in the world, people worship the gods. People turn to powerful people or powerful sources who can fulfill their desires. Success resulting from work is attained quickly in the human world, manushe loke. So, there are two ways of understanding this, and both are valid here. And that is, worldly success is easier to attain than God realization. So we cannot say, oh, I tried everything in the world, I'm just a failure everywhere, let me just get moksha and be free. It doesn't work. If I am frightened by the challenges in the world, there are much more challenges in the spiritual world. So it's not like, oh, life in the world is very difficult, so let me just pray. Because if we take this prayer and meditation seriously to heart, we see that the challenges in the inner world are far more tough than the challenges in the external world. So prayer and meditation are not forms of escapism. It's not like, oh, I can't deal with this world now, so let me just pray. I won't be able to pray. Because it's not the world out there that's a problem. It's my attachment and response and reaction to the world that's a problem. So even when I try to look inside, when I try to pray or meditate, that world will be creating havoc inside, even when I close my eyes. And so, worldly success is far easier than success in spiritual life. And this world is Swami Vivekananda referred to it as karma bhumi, that it's easier to, everything is relatively speaking, it's easier to realize God in this world than even in heaven. And the reason for that is, more or less, sometimes we might think, very few people think, oh, I have more joy than sorrow. Most of us tend to think, oh, I have a lot more suffering and just little bits of happiness here and there. But we do have both, sukha and dukkha. And that's a kind of an ideal environment to seek for moksha. If you are in heaven, there is so much joy there, so much somarasa to drink. So it is very difficult to think about moksha there, because there is just too much joy. If you are in hell, then of course there is all, this is being boiled oil and this is all fire. There is no question of thinking of moksha there. There is just too much pain and suffering. But where we are now, it's kind of balanced a little bit. So we have enough suffering to find, is there a way outside this? But there is also a little bit of joy to then remind us, yes, there is joy, but now I have a limited joy. Can I get unlimited joy and eliminate the suffering? So that's why Vivekananda referred to our present experience as a karma bhumi. So it is easier to realize God here than in going to Brahmaloka or any other places. There's another one way to understand that. Why is it so easier to attain success in this world? Again, I'm just speculating. It's not like I'm kind of definitively saying this is exactly how things are, but this is the way the human mind can think. That is, our human life is kind of spans, give and take few years, maximum 100 years. Some people might go a little over 100, but so it'll be around 100 or so. Now, people who go to heaven and we read, oh, they become immortal, again, not in an absolute sense, but immortal in the sense people live in heaven for a much longer period than we get to live here. And so the time kind of expands there, and ours is a much more compact life here on this planet. And therefore, when we strive for something, I can say, well, I'm doing this, but tomorrow I should get the result. And that's 24 hours. And 24 hours is 24 hours here and 24 hours in heaven is much bigger there, because everything is in millions of years. And that's another way of understanding why success comes quickly here, because time is kind of contracting here and the time seems to expand in heaven. These are the different ways commentators have tried to explain why success is attained more quickly in the human world. And so there are these different ways of understanding that. So we will stop here today. If you have any thoughts, ideas, comments, questions.
Swamiji. Swamiji, as Krishna says, we get what we ask for. And as you mentioned, we don't know what to ask for. So why doesn't God just tell us what to ask for?
God will tell us if we stop asking God for anything. Actually, if we just stop asking and just trust fully that God will give me what is good for me, then it will come. But we are in a hurry. Just think about it. That's what we do, don't we? In some ways, when we were little children, we ask our parents, give me this, give me that. But some child might say, of course my parents know me, they love me, they will give me what I need, what is good for me. So I won't ask anything. And so that's one way to do it. But it's so difficult not to ask. It's easy. Or you can ask in a different way. I've heard of a little son of a devotee in India. I heard this story some time back. So I think I mentioned this some time back also, that this little boy, and he was probably, I would think probably 6 or 7 years old. And so he has gone with his mother to a mall, and she was shopping, doing something. And this boy looked at something and liked it. And so he tells his mother, "Mother, I like that. If you like the idea of me getting it, you can you can give it to me. But even if you don't give it to me, that's all right." And the mother was saying, if your child says like that, how can you not give? There is a song in Bengali which Sri Ramakrishna used to sing. And the Bengali song is it goes something like this. Dak dekhi mon dakar moto kamon shama thakte pare. That when you're praying to mother, become like a little baby and ask in such a way that a mother will not be able to say no to you. So again, if a prayer comes from the heart, and if one is willing to recognize that even if God says no, that no is also an act of love. Yeah, so maybe it's not difficult to give it a try and see that going forward, say until Durga Puja, until Sunday, well, is next 4 days. Say, I'm not going to ask for anything to God. In my prayer, I'm just going to say, God, see, God knows us better than we know ourselves. We really don't know what's good for us. So if we totally depend in your prayer on the divine and say, I don't know what's good for me, here in this world or later, wherever, I am placing myself in your hands. You do with me what you want. And mean it, not just say it, mean it. You see, there is this very nice way to look at it, and that is they say God is the divine sculptor, and each of us is a block of marble. And let's say this sculptor wants to make a beautiful image, a beautiful sculpture from that marble block. What does that marble block have to do? And the answer is nothing. Just be and let the sculptor do his job. Now, when the sculptor is now chiseling and sculpting a beautiful image, what if this now marble blocks is just bored sitting here? Let me do some tap dancing. Let me just go on running from here and there. We're putting obstacles in God's path. We're doing that. So if I just completely depend on the divine, then, and that's what they say, God is trying to make a beautiful image in the lives of all of us. And if we want God to not put obstacles in God's path, we just say, I'm just going to be like, I want this, I want that, I'm going to run for this, I'm going to do this. And God is like, oh my God, how am I going to do my work? So this is one way to understand a total dependence of the divine. It's difficult. It's easy to speak about it, nice stories about it, and even to make resolve, I'm going to do it. But when we start trying to do it, we recognize it's difficult. It's not impossible, but we need to keep trying, with sincere trying. In fact, once we attain to some amount of success in complete dependence on the divine, our lives will change, real change. But still, now if you want to ask a question, you can still ask, not say, I'm just not depending on the Lord. Okay, so we will stop here today. Next time when we begin, we'll begin with verse 13. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhu.